And we're back with the Classic Auto Mall show from the Classic Auto Mall studio in Morgantown, Pennsylvania, exit 298 on the Pennsylvania Turnpike with our buddy Keith Martin joining us with our weekly segment. Keith's blog comes to life. Good morning, Keith.
Good morning. How are you today, Stuart?
I'm doing great because it's sunny here, and you've got wet weather and damp and dark and all that stuff. We just had Steve Austin from Great Vacations Tours. Was just on the show. So 2 Oregons in a row. It's kind of cool.
We've done a couple of tours with Steve Austin, and I have to tell you, he's the best.
Oh, my God. I just would kill to do one of those tours. It sounds like so much fun and so done the way it's supposed to be done.
Well, he does a nice mix of cars and culture, like Stonehenge and things like that. And so you really get an immersive process when you're with Steve. So I can't recommend him any more highly.
Yeah, and great guy, and he, one of those guys that you could just talk to all afternoon, and obviously we have things to do. So your latest blog is you got 3 days of sunshine and seize the moment per se.
I did. The cars love to be driven.
Yes.
And the sad part is when a car sits for a couple of weeks, you reach a tipping point. Mm-hmm. Like after a month or so, things will start to go bad in your hydraulics, in your electronics. I mean, and it's like the car just says it's going to screw with you for leaving it alone.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Yeah. That's what happened. We had a couple of nice days, and we took the Jag out, which I wrote about, and then we decided that I've got a 75 911S. Now, how far is Hershey from you?
Hershey is about 60 miles.
Okay, so that's where I think I told you I bought that car.
Yes, that was a great story. I love that story.
Hershey swapped me, got it here, and it's a G-body car, so it's narrow-bodied, and it's a primitive car.
Right.
The Jaguar is a luxurious car. The 911 has no power steering, no power brakes. It's a light. It weighs 2,500 pounds, which is about the same as a Carrera S.
Right. Wow. I didn't realize it was so light.
Yeah, and it's because it's pre-safety.
Right. Added a little dirt.
It's an unbelievable delight because it throws you back to when sports cars were primitive and required muscle to work. And if you didn't do your job, you weren't going to get where you wanted to go.
Absolutely. And to make a little work out of things is something maybe we're lacking overall in a lot of things in life. And to make it, we've made things dumbed down and too easy, it seems like. I mean, have you driven a new 911? It's like driving my grandmother's big Oldsmobile. It's huge.
Well, look how much does it weigh? Like 3,500 pounds?
Yeah.
I mean, some big number. I had an SL55, which I dearly loved, but it weighed almost 5,000 pounds.
Right.
And so no matter how good your suspension is, 5,000 pounds is kinetic energy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and the older 911s, there was just something special about not only the way they felt and drove, but the way, just the smell and the visuals of them and the way that everything was laid out, just like it was supposed to be done. Like the template for a car should be an early 911.
When you look across that dashboard and see all those big gauges, orange on black, you're in something special.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of people don't realize the thrill of driving something like that. Manual transmissions it's the first thing we say this on our job application is, can you drive a manual transmission? And if they put a question mark next to it, we move to the next person. So
I think that's going to change, Stuart, because my son, who's just about to turn 18, he can drive stick or manual, and he doesn't care.
Right.
I mean, stick or automatic.
Right.
I mean, to him, it's just a car.
And either way, it's fine. Right.
We've got a 91 Alfa S4 automatic, because I had a stroke, so I can't use my left leg.
Right.
And it's kind of, in a way, a hopeless car compared to my early Giulietta Spiders and Giulias. But my son loves it because even though it's a late model car and it's an automatic, it's an Alfa Romeo.
Right. And that's cool.
It looks like something. Yeah, it handles well. It has enough power. So I'm not so sure. I think it's good to drive a stick, but I'm not so sure it's that important to young kids.
Well, it doesn't seem to be. It's funny that you mentioned Alfa Romeo. Steve Austin says when he goes to Europe, he always rents an Alfa Romeo when he gets his rental car over there to give his kind of sports car fix, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't get those around here. They don't. Does Alfa sell anything? They don't sell it, do they?
Giulia.
Oh, the Giulia. That's right. That's right. They do have the Giulia. And the Stelvio. That's right.
I was the sales manager for the Alfa Romeo and Ferrari dealership back when the Milano came in.
Right.
And I have to tell you that Alfa has struggled for every day that it sold cars in this country.
Right.
And the reason for that is, in my opinion, having sold them new, they simply are incapable of building a car to a Korean or Japanese standard.
Right. And that's where the bar has been set, and you can't unset it. Right.
No, you don't. When you buy a new car for $30,000 or $40,000, you don't want check engine lights and return to the dealer for update and all the different things that they are wonderful cars. But I have so little interest in cars that have a lot of electronics.
Right. Well, as I always jokingly say, I looked under my wife's SUV, Mercedes SUV, under the seat, and it looks like the wiring for the space shuttle. There's so many wires under there, and it's just crazy. But, if you look at companies like Alfa Romeo and Fiat and, that are big or semi-successful in other parts of the world, it doesn't translate. And I think, a lot of that has to do with what you just said. The build quality of the Japanese cars changed everything, including General Motors and Ford and Chrysler.
I agree. And not only that, the Koreans have taken the Japanese to a new level.
Do you remember the first time you ever rode in a Hyundai? It was the biggest, it was the worst car you'd ever been in. It had a weird, funky smell to it, and things were weirdly oily plastic, and it was just, and now it's an amazing car.
Yeah. They were bad.
Yeah.
They were truly bad. I mean, it's interesting that in our lifetimes, we've watched that company pull itself up and say, we're going to be better than Toyota.
Yeah, and they did it. And I mean, you look at what they were able to accomplish, and to start out that poorly, talk about a stacked deck that you may not be able to overcome. It's surprising, as you said, that they overcame it. And of course, Kia and Hyundai and any of those type of guys are making. I mean, I remember when the Kia Stinger came out. That thing was cool, and it was like, wait, what is that? That's a Kia?
I want to jump back a little bit. So I want to talk about when we fired up the 911. It's so interesting how each of these old analog cars, and we talked about this last week, they have their own rhythm.
Right.
And if you're the magic guy who knows how many pumps of the throttle you give, how long you wait the key to turn on, how much you pull the hand throttle on, how much, I believe that we bond with our cars to the degree that they are imperfect and need us to bring them to life.
Absolutely. And the most fun thing that I read when we take a new consignment in, we have a sheet called operating instructions, and it's the most fun read of the whole packet because it's so interesting. One, all capital letters, do not touch the throttle, or do not do this or do this and make sure that you got, and it's so great. But, you take an old Porsche 911, and the one that you bought came really originally from Al Holbert's dealership, right? Around here.
I've got the original manual with the sign off from the dealership.
How cool is that?
For the car. Yeah. I mean, it's really, and it's a Sahara beige car, unusual color, still has the cloth interior.
Right.
But I wanted something, I've had some Tiptronics and some PDKs. And as I mentioned last week, you just put those in drive and roll away. The Sportomatic makes you actually shift the car.
Right. Yeah.
And I wanted to have that.
Are you surprised that more cars didn't have that as an option, that there weren't more that were kind of that way, that were a clutchless manual, if you will?
No, I think that before I had my stroke, if I walked by a Porsche with a Sportomatic, I would like hold a cross up and say, "Oh my God, that's like sacrilege! How can you do that?" Or my V12 Jag with an automatic.
Right.
I absolutely dismissed those cars without even thinking about it.
Yeah, I know. I know the feeling. There's a lot of cars that are like that you would walk past, and we say this all the time. A mid-'80s Corvette, as you and I talked about, is the perfect example of that. It's a beautiful car if you get past the fact that everything you have in your head about it. And that's the problem that you run into with these old cars. And a 911 from Al Holbert's dealership has got to be provenance of all provenance for a car, right? That's if that's where it came from, that adds a cool factor to it as well.
It does, although ultimately what I found that when you go to resell a car, the cool factor is less important than the condition of the car.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, that's the thing that I think people don't realize is that, a lot of times we will take undercarriage pictures of a car, and a guy will have never seen his car from that angle, and he's quite frightened when he sees it. He said, "What the hell? That's not my car, is it?" And it is your car, and there's a big rust hole here, and there's this, and a lot of people never see that. And I think in this day and age, condition trumps everything, right?
I recently wrote a story about going to Missoula, Montana to buy a two-stroke Saab.
Right.
And it was the very early days of eBay, and all you got was one picture and a note from the seller saying, "Oh, ran and drive perfectly when I put it in the garage 4 years ago, and don't worry, you can drive it home to Portland, no problem."
No worries, right?
And that's all you got.
Yeah, there wasn't much to it. I mean, I remember descriptions being red 4-speed was the entire description of a car that you would buy, and of course, still bought it anyway, right? We're ready to roll the dice.
Sure. When I was selling a lot of cars to Europe, we would have a basic set of descriptions. It would be runs and drives around the block. Runs and drives, and we'll get to the container at the dock.
Because it's going in and you talk about people who are trusting, people from overseas who buy classic cars from the United States. I'm always amazed that they seem to do what they say they're going to do more often than people that I sell that are, just around the corner practically. When a guy from Denmark says he's buying your car, he's buying your car. He's not going to back out.
Well, they develop relationships. We had a fellow named Joop Stolze who was in De Leer, and we sold a lot of cars to.
Right.
And we had a very good relationship. He trusted my descriptions, and it was just when fax machines were invented.
Right.
And so prior to fax machines, you'd have to mail somebody some Polaroid pictures of a car.
Right.
And with the fax machine, at least you could give a long description.
Right. And I love that paper that was shiny and slippery, and you couldn't write on it with a pen. That was really interesting. We get people that buy cars from us a lot of times, and they'll say, this car drive to Florida, which is what you just mentioned a minute ago. Will this car make it to Florida? Yeah, it probably will, but it probably wouldn't be the best idea if you're doing it to save $1. Now, if you and your son show up at the doorstep of our place and you've got a bag with a bunch of tools and duct tape and WD-40 and all that, and you and your son are going to make adventure of driving to Florida, that's a different story. That's a different animal.
Yeah. I go back and forth on the fly and drive thing because sometimes it's really cool.
Right.
And sometimes you just want to ship the car and get it to you.
Yeah. You know that you're going to have some things that are going to need to be done. And we tell everybody that buys a car, look, if you're spending every penny you got, don't. Find something that you can have a little bit of leftover money so you can do all the things you want to do to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Stuart, I want to pitch people on subscribing to Sports Car Market.
Absolutely.
We've been here 37 years, and we're the voice of authority for the collector car market. We have, what I've told you the other day was that we have experts analyzing cars that make the trolls on BAT look like kindergartner people.
Well, it's exactly because these are professionals. This is what they do for a living.
Yeah, and we vet they look at every car and they give you an analysis. They give you the VIN number, the mileage, and they tell you whether they think it was a good buy or a bad buy.
Sure.
100 cars a month.
And you do this not only for live auction cars, but also for the online auctions as well, too, right?
Absolutely. As online auctions have become a more important part of the market, we've increased our coverage substantially.
Sure. Do you see that? I think there's a place for everybody. Maybe I'm just naive when I say that, but for live auctions, for online auctions, for retail dealers like me, for wholesalers, I think there's a place for everybody. Competition in that respect doesn't scare me.
It's a learning curve.
Right.
You know where I think the big question is right now? Well, first of all, let me give you the special offer for Sports Car Market. So it's, what are we on? Test Drive 6, sportscarmarket.com/test drive with the number 6.
Yeah.
And usually Sports Car Market's $88 a year. We have tens of thousands of subscribers.
Right.
This is $19.95 for 6 months, the deal of life.
It will be the greatest thing you ever do this year if you've never been a subscriber or never read the magazine. And I mean that because I've been a subscriber since I was in diapers. I'm just kidding. But it is a fantastic magazine, and we always have considered it the Bible of the hobby, and the legal files. You talk about the legal files. We should do a whole show on that. Well, as a matter of fact, one of these days we'll definitely do that, because that is such a wealth of information about pitfalls and things to be careful of when you're buying a classic car.
It's the only column like that in the whole collector car world. Right. My favorite one was, this guy has got his car, he's got his Lamborghini Gallardo. He goes by a valet parking. He throws the keys to the valet. The valet takes the car and drive off, but the valet doesn't actually work there.
He's just got the red jacket.
He just takes the keys, says thank you, and goes away. So now whose fault is that, right?
Right, exactly. You're just tossing your keys. So anyway, so let's one more time, let's tell them where they can get this discount. It's sportscarmarket.com/testdrive6 with the number 6. The number 6. So, Keith, as always, it's a pleasure to have you on. We're enjoying this. I think we're just going to get better at this as we keep going every week, and we will definitely talk to you next week, and anxious to see what you have to say in your blog that comes out next Tuesday.
Well, I'll tell you, I came out. I've been driving old cars. They've been not letting me down, and I came out to find a giant screw in the tire of my new car.
Oh, nothing more painful.
We'll talk all about that next week.
Sounds great. Have a great week. Take care,
Thank
Keith.
That's great. Great being here.
Yeah, Keith Martin, Sports Car Market Magazine. We'll be back with the Classic Automobile Show next week with a new guest and a new set of hour to talk about, right? See you then.
The Classic Auto Mall Show with their host, Stuart Howden.